We're always looking to the future for answers about UFOs. But what if we're looking in the wrong direction? What if the real clues are buried deep in our ancient past? Today, we're diving into a wild theory that connects mysterious radio signals from space to flying machines described in texts that are thousands of years old.
Okay, so let's start with a huge question, one we've been asking forever. Are we alone out here? We've been pointing our biggest telescopes up at the sky for decades, just listening. And you know what? Sometimes it really feels like something is trying to talk back.
I mean, think about that crazy powerful signal Russian scientists picked up, right? Coming from a star system 94 light years away. And that's not the only one. We keep getting these weird, mysterious signals, and our best computers, they can't make sense of them. It's just static to us. So the real puzzle isn't just who's calling, it's how. What if their tech is just so fundamentally different from ours that we don't even know what to look for?
All right, so this is where things take a really interesting turn. Instead of looking forward, let's look way, way back. We're going to dive into some ancient Sanskrit texts that talk about these incredible flying machines they called Vimanas.
So there's this text called the Vaimanika Shastra, and get this, it describes these Vimanas not as some kind of fantasy chariot for the gods, but as real, sophisticated, aerodynamic flying machines. We're talking about a whole body of literature filled with detailed descriptions of some seriously advanced technology.
And it's not just a one-off mention either. These flying machines are all over the ancient scriptures. You've got Lord Vishnu in his Garuda-shaped vehicle, Lord Brahma in a swan-shaped one, but the one that really stands out, the big one, is the legendary Pushpaka Vimana, and its capabilities are just out of this world.
Okay, so the tech behind this Pushpaka Vimana, this is where it gets absolutely nuts. The texts claim it could travel at the speed of thought. It could literally change its size depending on how many people were on board. And maybe the wildest part, it could supposedly turn its passengers into something called the air element to travel. I mean, that sounds less like an ancient story and more like something straight out of a sci-fi blockbuster.
All right, so naturally, you're probably thinking, how on earth could any of that actually work? Well, the source material we're digging into today actually lays out a whole different system of physics to explain it. So let's break that down.
The whole idea basically comes down to two kinds of core elements, or tattvas as they're called. First, you've got these stula tattvas. Think of these as the gross elements, the stuff our world is made of. Sky, air, fire, the physical things we can see and touch. But then there are the param tattvas, these subtle elements. This is a much finer, non-physical kind of substance that plays by a totally different set of rules.
And this is where the contrast really hits you. A vehicle made from our gross elements, like a 747 for example, is easy to see, easy to track on radar. Simple. But a vehicle made from these subtle elements, according to this ancient theory, it would be totally invisible to our eyes, undetectable by radar, and it could move at speeds that completely shatter our known laws of physics.
And here's another layer to this that is just fascinating. It's not just about the ship, the pilot, the alien, if you will. Their body has to be made of the same stuff as their vehicle. So if you're flying a subtle element ship, you need a subtle body. That means their biology would be fundamentally different from our gross physical bodies.
So, this all leads to how these things supposedly move. The core idea is super simple, really. The more subtle elements you have in your vehicle's makeup, the faster you can go. You can see it here. A little bit of subtle, you're going very fast. A 50-50 mix, and you're many times faster. But a ship made of 100% subtle elements? Well, that's where you get speeds that are just impossible to even imagine.
Yeah, and this quote from the source text really nails it down. It says, "A vehicle of pure subtle light travels at the speed of thought." It's not just about zipping across our galaxy. We're talking about jumping to a whole other multiverse in less than a second. It's a truly mind-bending concept.
Okay, so all of this sounds absolutely incredible, right? But it brings up a really obvious practical question. If these things are real, why aren't we seeing them constantly? Why are UFO sightings always these blurry, fleeting moments?
Right? That's the big question everyone asks, whether you're a skeptic or a believer. If they're here, where are they? Well, this ancient theory we've been looking at actually has a very specific and pretty surprising answer for why we only catch these quick glimpses. So, let's walk through what a UFO sighting would be according to this idea. You have a vehicle made of subtle elements that flies into our atmosphere. Now, when its subtle nature hits our gross air, it causes a physical reaction. The ship's outer layer transforms into what's called the gross fire element, and that's the burst of light we see in the sky. But the moment that vehicle speeds up or changes its state, boom, it flips back to being subtle and just vanishes, instantly.
So, the key takeaway here is that seeing a UFO is actually a super rare event. It can only happen in that split second of transformation, that tiny window where the vehicle becomes just gross enough for our eyes or our radar to pick it up. Any other time, it's completely invisible to us.
And that brings us full circle, right back to the beginning. So could it be? Could those weird radio signals we can't decode and those fleeting lights in the sky actually be two sides of the same coin? Could they be evidence of a technology that's not based on principles we haven't discovered yet, but on ancient ones we've completely forgotten? It's a wild idea for sure, but it's definitely something to think about.